Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. I am, as always, Vadim Perlovsky. Today, we are excited to welcome a brand that has brought back to life a distillery built by the legendary E.H. Taylor. Castle and Key, we've heard first about them when we did our Pinhook tasting with Sean Josephs a couple of years ago. I believe he sourced some barrels from you and has some aging there. He was really excited about the partnership and put you guys on my radar, and I was lucky enough to meet some of your staff in Kentucky last year, got their contact info, and now that you're finally in California, we're excited to do a virtual tasting with Jon Newton. You are the national sales manager, is that right?
Director of sales, professional
Sales.
tasting girl, whatever you want to call me. We're craft, so we wear a lot of hats out there.
All right. What is it? Hashtag boss girl. I got you.
That's right.
That's right. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a couple of new ones. Welcome, everyone. Please enjoy the tasting. Remember, we're here to get nerdy, so feel free to throw out some questions, put them in the chat, or even if you want to unmute yourself and ask in person. All we ask is that throughout the tasting, if you're not actively participating, keep yourself on mute so we don't get background noise and we're not talking over each other. And if I do see that you're unmuted and not talking, which happens by accident quite often, I will mute you, so don't be offended, but just feel free to either send me a message or go ahead and unmute yourself again and we'll figure it out. But other than that, have fun, enjoy, and yeah, go ahead. Over to you, Jon.
Fantastic. Well, guys, appreciate the warm introduction here. And I am, as I was saying earlier, I'm actually a West Coast native. I'm from San Diego, born and raised, but a couple decades in now being out here in Kentucky. So it's a pretty cool, fun feeling to finally have this brand that I've been working with since 2017, back when bourbon was still kind of a pipe dream idea, and actually now getting it back out to my home state. And I'll tell you, the reception has just been fantastic. So, really my ask of you guys, you all are the tastemakers here tonight. You all are the 1% that I'm sure everybody else is going to when they have bourbon questions and, are looking for nerdy bourbon advice and everything else. So if you like what you're hearing and tasting today, my ask is to please go out there and spread the word. And then secondly, come visit us here in Kentucky. I'll share a little history, some images with you. I'll tell you the images do not do it justice. This is really kind of that bourbon mecca out here at Castle and Key. So make the pilgrimage and come hang out with us. Also, as was mentioned, my title with Castle and Key is Director of Sales, sales being the key word there. I am not a distiller. I'm not super technical. So take everything that I say tonight with a little potential bullshit in it. I will do my best not to outwardly lie to you. If I don't know the answer, I will throw my hands up and wave the white flag, and I'm happy to go and hunt down the correct answer for you. But if you can't call me on my BS, that's on you. So that's the disclaimer. Let me go ahead and share a couple photos of the distillery and for what we're doing out there today, and we will go ahead and jump on into it. So, all right, here we go. Ooh, don't want to do that. Let's see, here we go. All right, guys, hopefully this is all up. And we always, this is just a little bit of kind of our mission, vision, value statement. And a lot of this will make a little bit more sense as we get into it. But, really for us, our ultimate goal here is to be doing something that really is that next chapter in bourbon history. We're trying to be a little bit more than a regional craft brand. We really are at this home site that Colonel E.H. Taylor designed to be his showcase, the place where he wanted to create the best spirits in the world. And that isn't something, you can't share your spirits with the world if you're only in Kentucky. So we're here to really grow this and to do something special. And we have this little Colonel E.H. Taylor acronym here. And this is really the principles and by which we live by out at Castle and Key. So, long story short, this is who we are. Giant limestone castle, the middle of Millville, Kentucky, outside of Frankfort, Kentucky, heart of bourbon country. the last distillery that was ever built by the bourbon legend Colonel E.H. Taylor. This was back in 1887 as our founding. I'm sure pretty much everyone here tonight is familiar with the name Colonel E.H. Taylor, his legacy out at OFC, now modern day Buffalo Trace. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that while Taylor was at OFC, he was pretty creative in his accounting. He was basically running a barrel Ponzi scheme. I used to say he was the Bernie Madoff of the whiskey world. I've now updated this. He was the Sam Bankman-Fried of the whiskey world. That's my new modern interpretation. But selling barrels multiple times over racks up this huge amount of debt. And another very well-known bourbon name, George T. Stagg, comes in, purchases Taylor's debt, gives Taylor his one token share. And needless to say, Taylor being a very prideful man, did not appreciate that one token share. So Taylor and Stagg were constantly butting heads. Taylor eventually leaves. When that happens, he comes here. And he designs this distillery not only to be really the culmination of his life's work, but he is designing the site to create something to create spirits that he said will be fit for royalty. At this point in time, you have to kind of think about like what is happening in the world of whiskey. If you could afford it, you would drink scotch or you would drink cognac. And bourbon was really kind of seen as the spirit of the commoners. So how does one go about elevating that perception of bourbon to create spirits that are fit for royalty? Giant limestone castle, European gardens that are modeled after the gardens of Windsor Castle. And then leading into it a little bit more, you have this in your bottom right-hand corner. This is Colonel E.H. Taylor's water source, 140,000 gallon natural fed limestone spring in the shape of a keyhole that Colonel E.H. Taylor said was the quote key to his bourbon, the key to his success. That is the inception point for Colonel Taylor's spirits. That is, of course, the inception point for what we are producing today. So thank you, Colonel Taylor, for that little marketing softball 140 years down the line. We appreciate it, sir. So Taylor was making some pretty fantastic whiskey here on site, especially for back in that day. But this is also at a point in time where bourbon was primarily sold by the barrel and not the bottle. So when you would have a barrel of whiskey leave your distillery, there is no guarantee that it's going to end up at its final destination in the same condition. That individual who is guiding the flatboat down the Kentucky River, they would thief a little bit out. That person who was making the mule cart delivery to the corner store, they were going to thief a little bit out. And, might get water or prune juice. Neither of those things sounds horrible, but also common ingredients in these kind of like homemade batch bourbons were going to be creosote, formaldehyde, lead for sweetness, acid for bite, tobacco spit, things that are obviously not only disgusting, but have the potential to make people very sick at the end of the day. So Colonel Taylor, being the politician, amongst other things that he was, sees this opportunity for a little bit of legislative weight behind the spirits that he is making and helps pass the Bottled and Bond Act of 1897. So not only is this Colonel E.H. Taylor's last distillery, his crown jewel distillery, the very first destination distillery in the US, but this site really was the birthplace of Bottled and Bond. And this is where Taylor continues to operate up until 1920 when Prohibition hits. At that point in time, he retires to his farm. If you have a chance to come visit, go visit what was Colonel Taylor's farm back in the day. It's now modern day Ashford Stud, probably the most prestigious horse farm in the world. But you can definitely see a parallel to the limestone fences and everything out there to what he built at Castle and Key. And so upon his retirement, the distillery is then sold to the American Medicinal Spirits Company. They are not actively producing whiskey at this point in time, but they are selling stores of aged whiskey through the remainder of Prohibition. And then coming out of Prohibition, the site is then sold to National Distillers, the company that will eventually turn into Jim Beam. And if you guys aren't familiar about this, go back and look at the footprint of National Distillers coming out of the 1930s. They were an absolute behemoth. They owned over 50% of all the aged whiskey in the US. They were buying up as many distilleries as they could, and they were expanding upon those distilleries. So they bought what it was the Old Taylor Distillery, Old Crow, Old Grandad, Old Overholt, Sunnybrook Deluxe, a handful of others, and then they expanded the capacity. They actually took our site from doing about 125 to 150 barrels a day under Taylor to 600 to 1,000 barrels a day at the peak of production. It is an absolute monster for that point in time. This distillery was actually the first distillery to ever produce and sell 1 million 9-liter cases in a year. So it was a beast. It was really one of the biggest in the US. But then, as we all know, you come with the 1950s and into the 60s, that kind of cultural shift that happens. This is the time of James Bond and Jane Fonda. And as whiskey goes into decline and clear spirits are on the rise, this site is very old and outdated, and it's expensive to run. And in 1972, they shutter the doors to distillation. National continues to do a little bit of bottling and warehousing on site up until 1987, but that is then the year of the Jim Beam National merger. And at that point in time, the distillery is entirely shuttered. Walls start to fall in, roofs are collapsing, and we go from what was kind of Colonel Taylor's Bourbon Disneyland to something that looks a little bit more like The Walking Dead. A couple photos of what it looked like in 2014. At one point in time, there was a reclamation company out of Atlanta that came through and started tearing out all the original copper, brass, anything they could really get their hands on in value. They did. They removed. When you have the chance to come and visit, you will notice when you park in our parking lot. In the early 2000s, there were 2 pristine 40,000 barrel brick rickhouses that were torn down and sold off for scrap. Replacement value today is going to be about $4 to $5 million each. So when you come and visit, we really hope you enjoy our $10 million gravel parking lot. Still stings a little bit today, especially as we just had to purchase new rick houses up the hill for additional barrel storage. But the 2007, 2008 housing recession really dried up the need for materials. And when this company goes bankrupt, it probably actually ended up saving the rest of the buildings that were left on site. But this was the condition it was in 2014, when our founding partner, Will Arvin, local guy out of the Lexington, Kentucky area, refers to himself as a recovering lawyer, comes in and decides to buy this really cool piece of bourbon history. Will was 100% an industry outsider, had, grown up drinking bourbon his whole life, but truly knew very little about it. And so his discovery of what was at that point in time the Old Taylor Distillery actually came across a late night Google search. He was pretty well buzzed from a day at the track and then researching distilleries for sale. And what does he come across but this thing listed on the MLF? And it's like 2 a.m. Will's got a good buzz, and he's like over here elbowing his wife, Shannon. He's like, Shannon, wake up, look what I found. And Shannon's response is like, you're drunk, go back to sleep. And while like I personally, when I have a bad dream or a bad idea when I'm a little bit buzzed, I usually wake up in the morning and realize, oh, that was a horrible idea. I shouldn't pursue that. Well, that did not happen with Will. He pursued this bad dream, this bad idea, ended up purchasing the distillery a year later, 113 acres, dilapidated, asbestos, lead paint, environmental hazards, everything that came along with it, but a giant limestone castle, all this incredible history. And you guys will love this, especially all the West Coasters out there. Initial purchase price, $950,000. Let that sink in for a little bit. I mean, I don't know. What are you getting out in LA nowadays for $950,000? I guarantee it's not a castle.
A 2-bedroom condo.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So for a 2-bedroom condo, he bought a 113 acre in the middle of horse country with a castle attached. Now that was certainly a down payment on what was to come. It has absolutely been a labor of love getting us back to where we are today. Everything has been a historic restoration, really trying to do it in the way that we think Taylor would have approved of. But for as much time and effort that has gone into bringing the site back to life, I would say 10x has gone into the spirits. And we made the decision very early on that we were going to honor that legacy of Taylor, that everything was going to be 100% from scratch, and that we were going to start with that on-site proprietary water source. And for us, like, good whiskey is good whiskey. We have nothing against sourcing. We are a contract producer for other brands, and we're very loud and proud about it. We wear that as a badge of honor. But we also just wanted to be able to have complete control over the spirits that we are crafting, and to be able to do things differently, to make decisions based on what is going to make a better spirit, what type of spirit's going to make a better cocktail. So we definitely kind of view ourselves as a consumer driven company, as a quality driven company at the end of the day. Couple just key highlights of how we're different. Obviously from scratch, right? Secondly, local source grains. We have an amazing family run farm in Adairville, Kentucky. They've been working the land since the 1830s, far beyond us. And then next, transparency, guys. For us, nothing's proprietary, nothing's off limits. You want to know char levels, yeast strains, mash bills, whatever it is, like, we'll tell you. If you think you can go replicate that in your garage or your backyard, like, by all means, like, be my guest. But we have the most amazing bartenders, retailers, consumers in history. So we'd rather put all that information out there and then let you guys be the judge at the end of the day. And this is just a little quick snapshot of that our kind of like commitment for how we like to share everything. And just give you guys a quick little lineup of what we're going to be tasting tonight and what will eventually be available in market for you. So the three spirits on the left-hand side, what we kind of refer to as the core three, are Sacred Spring Vodka, Roots of Ruin Gin, and then Restoration Rye. And then we have the limited release items over there on the right. We're laying down as much whiskey as we can, so hopefully we're getting caught up. But you'll have our single barrel strength rye, our small batch traditional bourbon, and then our small batch wheated bourbon. All right. So, you guys ready to try a couple things? Any questions so far?
Is that the order we're going to tasting that we saw earlier?
Yeah, well, we're gonna jump around maybe like a little bit here, and I'll try to switch between the different slides. I think we're actually we're gonna do vodka as a warm up. We'll then jump into the whiskeys after that, and then we're gonna circle back to gin at the end.
Smart.
Griffin put it in here in an order, but I like to do my own thing here. We'll bounce around. So, well, let's start off with a little vodka, gents. So, Sacred Spring Vodka. We tell a little bit of the story in the package for everything that we do. So this is the tale of Colonel E.H. Taylor's proprietary water source, the inception point for everything that we're producing out of Castle and Key. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, normally my tasting notes on vodka are sadness and despair. It's an odorless, colorless, flavorless spirit. Great. Can't wait to drink it. Well, our goal at Castle and Key was to create a vodka that had character and flavor, but without being a flavored vodka. We wanted to do something different. We wanted to create a vodka that you could actually enjoy. So I definitely kind of pitch this as the idea of a whiskey drinker's vodka. It is our bourbon mash bill. It is literally everything that goes into our bourbon with the exception of the barrel. We then take that new make at 135 proof. We transfer it over into a stainless steel still. We distill it up to 190 proof being that threshold for converting it into vodka. But then on the back end, where most other vodkas out there filter the hell out of it, and they usually make up some like silly brand story about, I don't know, lava rock or dinosaur bones or whatever it is. We actually do an incredibly light filtration. It's almost nothing at all. And really the idea is we're starting off with a better quality base spirit because we're using better quality ingredients, and we want the character and flavor of those better quality ingredients to be able to come through. So on the nose, you definitely get like some of those sweet grain notes. And then on the palate, for me, buttercream frosting. Like buttercream frosting is like what it truly reminds me of. And it really kind of like coats the palate and has that viscosity to it. And that's achieved with that super light filtration on the back end, but none of that harsh ethanol hairspray sort of thing you normally associate with vodka. And guys, I'm not saying I'm going to convert you all to vodka drinkers tonight, but everything has its time and place. And the next time if you have to have a vodka in the house for your vodka drinkers out there, our hope is that you have Castle and Key, a vodka with a a bourbon spirit on the back bar. Any questions on that one?
I'm curious. So you
Yeah.
take the white dog from the bourbon and then distill it further to be 190. Obviously, it's going to lose some character. Why not just bottle? I like, why not just bottle white dog at 40%? It technically legally
Um,
wouldn't be vodka, or just you get
it would
more
not
out
be
of it by
vodka.
distilling. Okay.
It would not be vodka. That's the difference. And it's a different, just kind of like a different experience. And like the whole like moonshine thing is, it's kind of its own deal. And we really didn't want to go down the moonshine rabbit hole. We wanted to have something that had the ability to potentially be a little bit more refined. And actually, we never, when we initially started, we weren't going to do vodka, but we knew we wanted to do gin. But guess what? To do gin from scratch, you have to make vodka, right? And so then once we produced the vodka and we actually let a few of our industry friends and distributor partners try it, they're like, all right, guys, like, I know this is crazy to say, but you should probably put that in a bottle and let's sell some vodka, because this is one of the most unique vodkas we've ever had.
Okay.
And you think about it with like very like spirit forward cocktails, your Cosmos, espresso martinis, Vespers. If we have any James Bond fans here tonight, those are all cocktails that this vodka really helps enhance with that kind of like sweetness and roundness and smoothness to it. Good question though. Cheers. All right, so skip over the gin for the time being, and let's jump into a little bit of rye whiskey. Give me 1 second, mention if there was anything in the notes here in the chat. Oh, gotcha. Just the order questions. All right, perfect. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything in the chat for you guys. All right. So next up, I'm gonna go ahead and skip over here to Restoration Rye. So Restoration Rye. This one is going to tell a little bit of the story about bringing the site back to life and the meaning of the hands on the bottle. It's an homage. It's an thanks to all the team members who are part of this project. This bringing Castle and Key back to life was something that a lot of people said could not be done. And it absolutely took a village to make it happen. So we just kind of wanted to honor everybody along the way who was a part of that journey. We also decided early on to create a rye that was going to be a little bit more historically representative of what would have been created in this area. We're a little bit farther west than Pennsylvania, Maryland. We're a little bit farther south than Pennsylvania, Maryland. And guess what? Rye does not grow as well. So as a result, you're having a lot of those kind of like Western style, Monongahela style ryes that are going to be that lower percentage of rye, higher percentage of corn and malt, and more of what I would call kind of a bourbon drinker's rye. So what you guys are going to be trying here is the 2022 batch 3. It's coming in at 106 proof. I absolutely love this rye. I just got actually a double gold back on this one from the Denver Spirits Comp, which was pretty cool. But this is not going to be your super hot, punchy 90, 95.5 NGP rye. With it being that 63 rye, 17 corn, 20 malt, I get a ton of the fruit floral, or I get a lot of the spice up front, a lot of the fruit floral in the mid palate, but then a little bit more of kind of like a longer sweet bourbon finish. And for being at 106, I do not feel like it drinks like it's 106, especially compared to a lot of the other ryes out there. No chill filtration on this, as well as any of our other whiskeys. And the other thing I'll mention is we do deep toast barrels on everything. We're really trying to get to those sugars, get to that sweet layer. So we've been a big fan of toasted barrels from the start, before they really became kind of like the hot thing. The other thing that we do, if you notice at the bottom of the bottle, there's a vintage date. And then if you flip it over to the back, you'll have a batch and bottle on the back there. And we really take kind of like more of that unique blending approach between each of the batches to highlight the barrels that are best at that point in time. We intentionally alter the proof point between each of those releases as well, to be at the proof where the flavors are best represented. But it's consistency of quality over consistency of flavor. It's always a reason to come back and revisit. If you have a specific batch that you absolutely love, like for me, it was 2021 rye batch one, and 2022 rye batch one that we dropped at 113 proof. And to me, it was just like straight up kind of like Werther originals caramels. Like I absolutely love that release, but buy it all because we may never have anything quite like it again. We're in, especially as we are doing everything from scratch, we're continuing to push the age statement up over time. So we're going to have a natural flavor drift anyway. So, but the idea of trying to force something into this consistent flavor profile, that would probably be okay, but maybe not great. We would much rather try to achieve this kind of like micro batch approach where we will always have the best representation of our whiskey at that point in time. But cheers on this one. Jump on in if you have not already.
Are you guys changing the mash bills between the batches in the years, or is it just about age and location and that sort of things for the difference?
Great question. No, the mash bill does not change between the years. It's minimum, age on the barrels. Yeast strain, we do a spring yeast strain and a fall yeast strain, and actually I'll talk more about that in a second. And then we have three very unique climates for aging barrels. We have what is in this picture right now, Warehouse B, which is an old historic Taylor warehouse, 534 feet in length, longest rick house of its kind. It's an absolute monster, 36,000 barrel capacity. But then additionally, we have Warehouse E. It's a concrete warehouse that was built in 1953, 65,000 barrel capacity, 8 stories tall on that. And then we have an offsite warehouse that's new to us that is going to be like more kind of like contemporary warehouse, metal clad. So we're getting this huge variety of flavors just coming from, yes, we are using char level 3s as char level 4s, the 2 different yeast strains, and all the unique rick houses. And so we're really, really like looking to blend unique flavors from what kind of exists within that palette, but not altering the mash bill between the different releases.
Great question. I just compared it to the batch one side by side. And yeah, batch one still wins in my book too.
The 2022 batch one. Yeah,
yes.
that one's just so good. The 2022 batch one was only a 40 barrel batch as well. And I had to fight our accounting team because I was like, yeah, guys, like we're not going to change the price, but we need to drop it, release this thing basically at like cash strength. So fortunately, we won that battle. We'll probably have some other intermittent super high proof releases in the future too, if I had my guess.
Right.
We do a low barrel entry proof on this. We go in at 118 on the rye. So obviously lower than that 125 for the legal limit. But because of the unique rick houses, we don't necessarily gain proof. Actually, in Warehouse B, it's on the first or second floor. We're traditionally losing a couple proof points, and then third or fourth and a half floor, we're going to be gaining. So it's been really interesting with the bourbon at being at that 107. We've actually had some barrels that have dropped below 100 proof, which has been they're great. It's great whiskey. Some of those lower proof barrels have been some of my favorite, but when you look to create a bottled and bond product and things like that, it certainly makes it a little bit more challenging. Any other questions on the rye before we move on to a little bit of bourbon, or until we move on to the single barrel? No. All right. So let's talk about a little bit of some cash strength single barrel. So Restoration Rye single barrel. This is the only kind of like by the barrel program that we are offering, although we will have a bourbon by the barrel program in the future. This I'm honestly not sure about which barrel was sent to you guys. So I'm blind on this one. I'm actually going to defer to you all. But we go through a pretty rigorous vetting program on single barrels. Everything that we even have the ability to that we float out there for the barrel program has been vetted by our sensory team to be really kind of like the best of the best. And, you know, we're also looking for diversity of product here. We want to make sure that it's something that is, you know, outside of what that kind of that typical pattern that we're seeing within the different batches. So at cask strength, absolutely no chill filtration going into this when we're continuing to grow the barrel program. So when you guys have the opportunity to come and pick with us in the future, what you taste on site with us is absolutely going to be what ends up being in the bottle at the end of the day. I've you know, coming from the whiskey world before my time at Castle and Key, I'd been on multiple barrel picks, and you try just something that's absolutely amazing at cask, and then they send it to you 3 months later, and it's at 92 proof or whatever, and it just tastes like a totally different whiskey. For us, what you get is what you get, and we're trying to offer this as really kind of like a purist product for the whiskey enthusiast out there. Everyone have a chance to dive into the single barrel a little bit? And since I don't have this one in front of me, I need you guys to give me your tasting notes on this one.
I'm getting a lot of caramel on the front end, and then some nice bake spice notes in the back, and real nice viscosity. Quick question: I didn't hear who's in the production team. Who's the distiller? Is there a different blender, and what's their background? And I was 10 minutes late, so if you covered that, I apologize, and I'm not trying to make you repeat yourself. I assure you.
No. Great question. So when Castle and Key kind of first came on the scene, Marianne Eves was our master distiller, and kind of made a lot of news in the whiskey world, being kind of the first female distiller, master distiller bourbon, and coming over from the Brown-Forman side. In 2019, Marianne kind of set out on her own to go and do the consultant thing, which in my relationship, I knew Marianne way back when, coming from the Brown-Forman days, and knowing her, she's just such a unique, interesting, creative individual, and the creative side is really what she loves and strives for. So her going into that is absolutely perfect for him. But then we were kind of left with this big decision: do we try to backfill with another traditional master distiller role? And those are some very big shoes to fill for Marianne. Or is there a different alternative approach? And so for us, we had a lot of amazing talent that was kind of cultivated under Marianne. And so we decided to elevate other people within the distillery. And we're taking now more of kind of like the idea of a team approach versus the one center figurehead approach individual. Really, for us, it's the idea that that collective knowledge is going to be greater than that of the individual. And so we have people who are kind of like specialized in fermentation, distillation, maturation, and blending. Brett Connors really probably kind of takes the spotlight a lot of the times for us. He is our lead blender, just has an amazing palate, and the man is a wealth of knowledge. I apologize that you guys are stuck with me tonight and not Brett, because he literally knows something about everything. He's a rock star. A lot of other folks that we've kind of poached from different parts of the industry. We have some former Sazerac employees. We have some folks that are coming from the craft distilling world, the craft beer world. It's some people that have got into the industry that are totally industry outsiders. So it's a little bit of everything. But also, I think without us having that single figurehead position, it's given us a little bit more freedom to really kind of like pull knowledge from some of the best in the industry. And especially with us doing the contract distillation, we have a lot of eyes from the best of the industry coming in. So perfect example of this, Jim Rutledge. After Jim Rutledge leaves Four Roses, he goes out to do the contract, or the contracting thing. And he has had such an influence on what we're doing out at Castle and Key in the world of fermentation. I mean, that's really what he was kind of known for, as being this fermentation expert. And so I think one of the things that we adopted from him was this was the idea of low set temps. Cool yeast is happy yeast. Cool yeast makes better flavor. So we take our mash and cool it down to 65 degrees before we start our fermentation process. And ever since we implemented that, along with a handful of other things from Jim, I feel like we really started getting some, just like probably some of the best new make in the industry. Larry Ebersol has been another huge contributor to what we've done out there. Larry Ebersol, formerly of MGP, then New Riff, Whistle Pig, a handful of others. But I mean, he's probably one of, I feel like unless you're really like an industry insider, a lot of people have never heard that name, but he's an absolute legend. He recently helped us implement a sour mashing process, among other things. So it's, people ask us all the time, what's the best whiskey you make? And my response is it's the whiskey that we're making tomorrow. Because for us, it really is always kind of this continual approach, continual innovation, always looking to create something new and different.
And I'm sorry, brain fart. Marion Barnes was featured in Neat, right? When Castle.
Correct.
Right. And she was discussing it. I have seen it several times and just, it left my brain. So I should have known that. I apologize.
No worries. Hey, I always love to answer the question. And if anyone hasn't seen Neat, by the way, go look it up on Netflix or Hulu. It's a fantastic piece. They did a really good job with it. What do you guys think about that rye cask strength? Everyone enjoying it? Perfect. Fantastic. So moving on to a little bit of bourbon in that case. So when Griffin sent you guys on the bourbon, this was 2022 batch 6. This was a 60 barrel batch. We are a little backstory in terms of like where our mash bill came from. So the whiskeys really were inspired by a bottle of 1917 pre-prohibition Taylor. This was a bottle or a barrel that would have been filled in 1917 and then bottled in 1933. And it was a barn find down in the area, created under the watch of Colonel Taylor. So first pour that our partners ever shared together, and they had enough forethought to then send that off to a lab, ran it through a GC, and we were able to determine that yes, Colonel Taylor was using white corn. Yes, Colonel Taylor was doing this high percentage of malted barley. Yes, he was doing low barrel entry. So that was the basis for the inspiration for the whiskey that we're making today. And we're taking more of that kind of like historic whiskey mash bill approach. A lot of things kind of shifted as bourbon had that downturn, going into the 1960s and 70s, where they made a lot of changes based on profitability, but not necessarily quality of goods. And losing lowering the percentages of malted barley was a big part of that. It's the most expensive grain that you're putting into your mash. The philosophy became more of like the malt is there for catalytic conversion versus flavoring. Well, in my opinion, I see Jeff there with his Ardbeg sign in the background. Scotch and Irish and beer producers, beer distillers are not wrong. They know what they're talking about. Malt is an incredibly important flavoring ingredient. So we really wanted to bring that kind of back in the recipes. And I think that's something that really kind of like helps differentiate the flavor profile of Castle and Key from a lot of other products out there. I saw a note on here, 60 barrels for the batch size. 60 barrels for a small batch is a very relative term. 60 barrels is a very small batch size. There's no definition for what small batch is, unlike, like in the beer world where you actually do have like definitions for where you are in terms of like craft. But if you looked at it is one of those things that it is relative. I think probably a good example is going to be like Elijah Craig or like a Four Roses small batch. The only thing that's really viewed is it needs to be smaller than your main batch. So if you've got your Four Roses yellow label that's looking at 10,000 barrels, well, now Four Roses small batch could be a 2,000 or 3,000 barrel batch, and it's still going to be technically small batch. But no, I would say 60 barrels is still pretty is a very small batch size in comparison to what's what's happening in the industry right now. So this was actually one of my, I really enjoyed this release. The batch 6 of 2022 was one of my favorites, although I think right now 2023 batch 2 is probably my top pick. Both of those are on their way to California right now. They actually should be landing next week. So you should be seeing both 2023 batch 1 and batch 2 in market. But we actually, at the end of the year, we did batches 4, 5, and 6. They were all released at the same time. Each of those were going to be 60 barrel batches, and that's just really how we were getting the best combination of flavors. And that's why our batch size is going to vary a little bit too. You know, if at the end of the day, if we do one batch of 120 barrels and it's superior to 2 60 barrel batches, we're going with the 120 barrel batch. If we have maybe 340 barrel batches that are better than the 120, well, guess what? We're going with 340. So it's really always about quality of whiskey at the end of the day. The barrel entry proof on the bourbon, something else I always like to talk about a little bit. We go into the barrel at 107 proof. The reason being, not only is because it is a historic proof, but when you go into the barrel with a lower proof, it means you're going to have a higher concentration of water. Well, sugar is going to be water soluble, not alcohol soluble. So we're going to get greater extraction of the natural sugars that exist within the wood of that barrel in a shorter period of time, helping us target that more kind of like sweet forward bourbon profile that, being here in Kentucky, we all have a little bit of a sweet tooth that we personally really enjoy. And you're also going to see a lot less dilution at the end of the day, going with the lower proof. So no, it is not. It's definitely not the most cost-effective thing. Most distilleries want to go in at that higher proof, that 125, to really be able to maximize the cost of the barrel, which is one of the most expensive components of the whiskey. But we like going in at that lower barrel or entry proof, greater sugar extraction, and then also less dilution going into the bottle at the end of the day. Initial thoughts on the batch 6? All right.
I found this really surprisingly sweet. It's not a bad thing. I don't really look at bourbon and think sweet when you drink it. So
interesting. I'm glad you like that. For us personally, we enjoy that really kind of like sweet, like dessert forward style. And like, is this like a Woodford double oaked? No, they definitely have a little bit more sweetness on it. But we have a sweet tooth at the end of the day. And so that's kind of in the profile of what we're targeting.
Well, you hit the nail on the head then. I like this one. It's great.
Excellent. Fantastic. Glad you're enjoying it.
Strangely on the nose, the first note I got was like fried schnitzel, like fried foods. I don't know, maybe it's
fried schnitzel.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Hey, I'm on the sales side, man. I don't have a good enough palate to be one of the blenders out here, so I'll defer to you on that. But
it's got like an earthiness or like an umami on it, a meatiness.
I should mention the age statement on this is 4 years. Blended age is about 5 on this one. And each one of our releases is going to be representative of about 30% of our aged inventory. So we are continuing to gradually push the age statement up with each of the releases. And the goal is for us ultimately to have a product that probably lives more around that kind of like 6 to 8 year for the baseline, and then having kind of like other LTO offerings at higher age statements in the future.
This is very easy to drink. This is very, like Jane said, it's very sweet, very delicious.
Well, fantastic. And we really tried to we have a lot of with the unique batching process, we really try to have like some distinctive variance between the batches. And so like, yes, I agree, like this one incredibly like just like easy drinking. You could see, you know, sitting around the campfire and this bottle disappears in the night. We have other ones that are maybe a little bit I don't know, more complex, maybe more kind of like thought provoking. You know, you want to sit there and you want to like chew on it with like a good cigar, right? So each one kind of is like the idea of like a pick your own adventure type situation, but still ultimately wanting these to be the best representation of the whiskey at that point in time. All right. How about a little weeded here, guys? So our founding partner, Will Arvin, he is a huge weeded bourbon fan. He and weeded was always on his list. So this is his personal favorite, and honestly, right now this might be my personal favorite too. This was 2022 batch 2, 98 proof. 49 barrels went into this batch. Age stated at 5 years. Blended age is a little bit closer to 6. It's a 73% white corn, 10% white wheat, and then 17% malted barley on this one. It is just a great example of a weeded bourbon. But my main complaint with a lot of the weeded bourbons out there is that they sometimes can have the tendency to, yes, be like very sweet and smooth, but maybe not like a whole lot of character or complexity. So a lot of times I describe this as being like a weeded bourbon with all the things you want in a wheat, but maybe with like a little bit something extra. And I definitely kind of get this like oatmeal cookie thing going on at the back end that I personally attribute to the high malt mash bill. But this was definitely my favorite of the 2 weeded releases. We are actually bottling the first weeded release of 2023 right now, and it's going to be pretty limited in terms of what makes it out to California. I think we're probably only looking at about a 200 barrels on this one, unfortunately, but you will see it out there. I see a note here. Using this mash bill for pancakes, you know, I mean, maybe we're trying to figure out, we got to find a solution for all of our spent slop. Right now, we spend about $2 million a year on slop removal. So maybe pancakes are going to be the solution. We need to write you a check if that's the case.
As far as moving into the future, will it always be small batch? Will there be an effort to have a more consistent core lineup? Will that core lineup be more age stated as you get older and have more barrels? I mean, or is it always just sort of going to be this, you know, this is the best as it is right now. Here's what we're making right now, and this is the best version of it. Enjoy. We may never, you know, hit it exactly the same, which I'm not saying is wrong, just sort of curious, because obviously as you're making new whiskey, you know, I prefer this to let's source it and then we're going to start to change it out and hopefully it won't be totally different. I'd rather taste what you're making along the way and either journey with you or figure it out. So I'm just sort of curious what your plans are.
No, great question. You know, I would almost view this as a reverse, maybe like a reverse BTAC type situation, where we're going to lead with this kind of like unique blending concept. It has a ceiling for sure. You can, you know, like, is this going to be taking this route? Can this be a 50,000 case brand, 100,000 case brand? There definitely is kind of like, I think, a cap for like how much whiskey you can put out with having to put this much time and attention into each one of these kind of like small batch micro batches. Short answer is yes, I do see us having probably more of at some point in the future, and we're talking years down the line, we probably will have something that'll be a little bit more kind of like consistent flavor profile, everyday product. But then this Castle and Key line, as the age statement pushes up, and if we're able to get to the point where maybe it is going to be 8, 10, 12 year age statements, things like that, then this becomes a little bit more of the limited allocated side of it, with a kind of like semi-annual release program. That being said, we have to sometimes let the whiskey speak for itself, and we have to let's see how it ages and matures. We definitely have a plan for more kind of like LTO and experimental offerings coming down the line. I'll share a little inside baseball with you guys. Actually, this year, the weeded small batch, this particular product is going to go away at the end of 2023, but it is going to be replaced with a 6-year-old age stated bottle and bond. Had to have in a bottle and bond at some point, just had to wait to the point at which we felt it was we were going to do right by Colonel Taylor. And then we will also have a small batch barrel strength weeded with a 7-year-old age statement that will be coming in behind it as well. So while we lose one of our favorites, we're going to be gaining 2 that I think are going to be absolutely stellar at the end of the day. Started to talk about a yeast strain a little bit earlier, and I wanted to elaborate that on that a little bit more too, because it's just such kind of like a cool, unique story. So, as I mentioned, we have 2 different yeast strains that we're currently using. We have kind of like our spring, summer, and then we have our fall, winter. And these were developed early on when before even like the power was turned back on in the distillery, and it was Mary Ann and then Pat and Shane from Wilderness Trail. Pat and Shane, if you guys have not met them at any point or are not familiar with them, they are just like absolute experts in fermentation. What they've been doing out at Wilderness Trail and with Firm Solutions, which was kind of like their bread and butter, is just amazing. And then they were just acquired by Campari about 6 months or so ago. Pat and Shane, former Four Roses.
We did a tasting with Pat. I think the week that the purchase was announced.
Oh man, was he just sitting there with like big old like rings on his fingers and like fur coats?
Pretty much, yeah. Every time he smiled, you could see the grill. It was great.
Yeah, perfect.
He came in wearing a big chain.
Pat and Shane
we
are just
understand why.
They're amazing dudes though. So smart, and they look like the lost members of ZZ Top. Just like great dudes. But they're absolute experts in fermentation. So they were in the distillery with Marianne, kind of like poking around using the lights on their iPhones, and they found this pipe that had like was sawn off and had like petrified mash on the inside. So they took a scraping of it, bring it back to the lab, start cultivating it, and apparently it's making a bunch of alcohol. So here we are, we get all excited, thinking that some long lost Taylor yeast strain had been discovered. And, long story short, it was not the Saccharomyces cerevisiae distiller strain that we were hoping for. It ended up being like some weird, wild Icelandic strain. But it was producing a really interesting flavor profile, very kind of like sweet and fruit and floral. And so we were able to match the flavor profile of that wild strain to a Saccharomyces cerevisiae strain. And that's what we now use for our spring, summer. And we have another that's a little bit more traditional that we use for our fall, winter. But that's part of the contribution too for that unique blending process that gives us those unique flavor profiles to be able to pull from. What do you guys think about the weeded? See some happy nods. Perfect. Love it.
Weeded is really awesome too. I like both of them. I was sort of torn between the 2, but you mentioned the spring and summer versus the fall and winter. Do you have different bottles for each season then, or the half-year seasons?
We are blending using whiskey front crossing seasons right now, but in distillery terms, because historically July was always such a hot month and it was hard to do distillation. July was always historically a shutdown month for distilleries, so it's seasonally we were looking at January January through June, and then July through August, or July through December, as to separate that way. And so for when you do see the bottled and bond releases in the future, though those obviously will be separated by season, and we try to include as much detail as possible. So the goal will be to have the season written on the back and indicated there.
Cool.
Great question, though. All right. Let's see. Was there? I was in Pensacola for a tasting at Old Hickory, Tony N. I don't know if it was the same one that you were at, but I love those. I love that place. Old Hickory is amazing. There's some rock stars over there.
Yeah, they do a great job. And it's like, I thought I may have seen you there, but yeah, Katie owns that.
When was it?
Oh gosh, it was probably, well, that's whenever I bought my batch 1. So
Okay.
oh gosh, 8-10 months ago, maybe.
I was in Pensacola back in January of this year. And then, yeah, I was in Pensacola in January and February of this year. So may not have been me, some other long-haired ginger running around.
I will check.
I got to tell you, as a side note, I almost always finish my 1 ounces. I can't revisit, but I didn't finish the vodka for whatever reason. But I've now revisited it after having all of the bourbons and ryes on my palate, and it is almost coming off like a flavored vodka. It's amazing how well or how much those notes are coming forward or coming through on my palate after experiencing all the bourbon and rye. It's pretty interesting.
Amazing. I love that. Getting those like kind of like a little bit of citrus, definitely this kind of like nutty flavors, ton of vanilla.
It's
Very cool.
Not a creamsicle, but if a creamsicle had some like almost like yuzu or lemon in it, but yeah, citrus and vanilla and real nice. And no, like you said, no ethanol, no burn, nothing. It's pretty easy drinking right now.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, Old Hickory I went to was in October.
Okay. No, not me that time around. Maddie, our Florida rep would have been there. I remember she did an event at that point in time.
Yeah.
There, but no, honestly, it's you don't think about like Pensacola, Florida, and associate that with one of the best whiskey bars in the U.S. But guys, if you have not made it to Old Pensacola, make the trip. Honestly, I would put them up there with like Delilah's up in Chicago. They're so much fun. It's a little bit punk rock. There's no pretentiousness to it. But if you happen to be in Florida, the Panhandle, you need to go and check it out. Well, shall we round out with a little bit of gin here at the end?
Well, I do want to.
Any gin drinkers in the group?
3 people haven't voted on the poll. So I want to remind
I'm probably
everyone
one
to
of
vote.
them.
Have their
How do
favorite
I get
expression
back
so
to the
far.
poll here? Not sure if I know how to get back. Oh, here's the poll.
Found it. And then as we
Got
do
it.
that, I do want to invite everyone to raise a glass and jump on screen with us for our customary cheers. Got to get Griffin to jump on. Oh, Griffin's busy, so maybe not. Jackie, Tim, Carrie. Give another 30 seconds. There we go. Got 1. Yes. There we go. 2. All right. I'm going to push for 100%. All right, everyone, raise a glass. Thank you to Jon and Castle and Key for tonight. This has been absolutely fantastic. We're not done yet, but cheers to you. Cheers to everyone tonight. And smile to the camera. Perfect. That's a great shot.
Griffin had to get on to make sure I showed up tonight. I think I was stressing him out a little bit.
I've had days like that. Awesome. So, show of hands. How many gin drinkers in the room? Yeah, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, got a couple. All right.
All right. I'll
A
take
single
that.
finger guy. There you go. Jackie likes gin. All right. Wow, it's a gin group. All right.
Is there anyone here who absolutely
There's a
hates
time
gin?
and a
Do we
place.
have any of those in the group? All right. Well, perfect. And hey, you know what? We totally get that. a lot of people think it's like, they're like, oh, you guys make a lot of stuff, not just bourbon. Well, like, yeah, because you know what? The contemporary consumer doesn't just drink bourbon. A lot of people, we all drink seasonally. There's absolutely a time and a place for neat bourbon, a cocktail, a gin and tonic, a vodka soda. So our goal is really to produce high quality spirits, no matter what the category. And I like this comment here from Jane. Picky about gin, most of it is crap. Agreed. So hopefully this will be in the gin category that you enjoy. We're doing some stuff that I think probably no. Oh, come on, pine cones and old sweat socks. No, that won't be us here. We've got something different for you. So here's how Castle and Key gin is different. I feel like most people out there who are not big gin fans or despise gin, it's because they've had a bad gin experience, and most likely they had a bad gin experience with Seagram's or Tanqueray or Bombay or Gilby, like some traditional like London dry style, very piney, very resinous. That is not what we are making. We wanted to come in and we wanted to do something very different, very culinary, really to kind of show the ability of what we had, how we could understand flavor and how we can blend flavors together. So this is going to start off with our rye whiskey new make. We're going to redistill that into vodka, and then we're going to distill it again. But on this final distillation, we have a dual basket gin system. And so we're actually doing true vapor distillation or true vapor infusion. We're going to force that alcohol vapor through these gin baskets packed with botanical matter, and it gives you this bigger, brighter, truer flavor versus a process of maceration where you're just taking vodka and throwing botanicals in and then filtering them out, or compounding where you're taking vodka and just adding flavoring, like artificial flavoring compounds to it. So this is going to give you bright, big, true flavors. It's going to play really well in a cocktail, and this is not by any means going to be that resinous, piney gin that you probably had a bad experience with back in high school when you got into your parents' liquor cabinet. We're going to use rosemary, chamomile, lemon verbena, and ginger as the primary flavoring botanicals. And then in addition to that, you're going to have, of course, juniper. That's the requirement by law. But the juniper really kind of plays second fiddle to the rosemary and the chamomile, in my personal opinion, and then angelica, coriander, and licorice root on the back end. But those are all a little bit more structural. And by the way, this is 106 proof. So a little bit higher proof than most gins out there. We definitely designed it to make a better cocktail. It's going to work incredibly well in a gin and tonic or a gimlet or a flip or a fizz. Incredible in a Negroni, so you really can't go wrong. And if you've got any James Bond fans out there, it makes it a killer Vesper, especially when it's with the Castle and Key Sacred Spring vodka. So cheers, guys. Let you dive into it. Let me know what you think.
I like all the different herbaceous and spicy notes that you get out of it. It reminds me a little bit of an Old Tom style. The citrus,
especially with the sweetness on it.
Yeah, the citrus and the sweetness. But like all the little herby things, kind of each one sort of sings at a different point as you're tasting it. It's really fascinating. This may have supplanted the one that I like. So I'm not a
Perfect.
huge
Love
fan,
that.
but I like the ones that are not super resinous. So this is really fascinating.
We have had, because of the thing that you were mentioning about how you really can pick out like each of those individual flavors. I think that's the thing that is really kind of like endeared us with the bartender crowd too, because it's such a fun gin to cocktail with. And it isn't like a lot of these other gins where it's kind of like, a lot of gins are sort of like the Dr. Pepper of gin, right? Like there's so many things in there, you can't really tell exactly like what you're tasting. This, you can really pick out all of those kind of like key ingredients. But I would say this is absolutely become kind of like the bartender gin of choice. down here in our region. So we're hoping to make that the case out there in California as well. Excellent. Well, I'm glad you guys. I was getting a little bit nervous, putting gin out there to the bourbon drinker crowd because where people can be harsh, but I love that you guys have all enjoyed this. So that's fantastic. Let's see, a little comment from Jeff there. If you guys ever make it to the Louisville area, you must go to Castle and Key. Prettiest distillery we've ever been to. They do great events as well. You're actually going to a wedding there this fall. Perfect, Jeff. I love it, sir. That's absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. You're doing my job for me. Come and visit us, guys. The photos don't do it justice. It, like I said earlier, it really is kind of bourbon mecca out there. So come complete your bourbon pilgrimage. Come see the birthplace of bourbon hospitality, the inception point of the Bourbon Trail, the birthplace of Bottled and Bond, the last legacy distillery of Taylor. We'd love to host you all.
They actually have like concerts on the weekends around the Key House. And I mean, the grounds are just, you could wander around forever on the grounds. They're just gorgeous. I can't wait for the wedding. It's going to be a blast.
That'll be a fun one. I'll pass on here. I actually have mine and Griffin's contact info. So shoot us, drop us a line when you're going to be out there, and if we're on site, we'll try to come by and say hi. So.
Yeah.
Well, guys, as I mentioned, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
You are in Frankfurt, is that right?
We are. Yeah, Frankfurt's the easiest reference point. Technically, we're in Millville, but you would drive through Millville and never know it. So, yeah, Frankfurt.
Okay, because like I said, I'll be there in June. So as long as I can find, I'll look it up.
Yeah, we're so come in, stay in Louisville or Lexington. You'll have an amazing time. Don't stay in Frankfurt, unfortunately. We're going to be about 45 minutes from Louisville, 35 minutes from Lexington. So, but no, please, we're right there in the heart of bourbon country, 5 miles downstream from Woodford, 7 miles as the crow flies from Buffalo Trace. You're a 15-20 minute drive to Turkey and Four Roses. So right where you want to be.
Okay, sounds good. I know that area very well.
Fantastic. Well, guys, as I mentioned earlier too, we really do pride ourselves on transparency here. So, any final questions for me? Nothing's proprietary. Nothing's off limits. We got a comment on the Vesper cocktail here. It's the original James Bond cocktail. It's a martini. Essentially, but yeah, in Ian Fleming's original James Bond, that's where the Vesper came from. So you're gonna have your gin, preferably Roots of Ruin now, and Sacred Spring vodka, and then Lillet. And it's super booze forward. I mean, you're basically just drinking straight booze, but it's delightful and refreshing at the same time.
You mentioned that the new Modern Brick House is off-site. Where exactly is it?
Yeah, so we acquired a 300,000 square foot building that's up in Versailles. It was actually originally it was a print house. I feel like we got some late millennials and Gen Xers here in the group, so it's where they produced the Encyclopedia Britannica back in the day. And then actually the first edition of Harry Potter was actually printed there. So kind of weird tie-in. Maybe we'll have a weird Harry Potter single barrel series or something in the future. But yeah, it's up the hill in Versailles, and they moved locations, had a great opportunity. So bought this building, metal clad, and converted it over to whiskey ricking, and as well as our bottling and deco facilities are up there now too.
And was it just a space thing, or was it to like try something different because it's a different building, you have the opportunity, I mean, or both?
Space
Okay.
was the main thing. Entirely, we 100,000 barrel capacity on site, and we were pushed to the gills. We think this will probably get us through the next like 2 years, but we're already looking towards the future for additional solutions.
And you guys do contract distilling for other brands.
Correct. Pinhook is probably the one that is you know the best and is the most vocal about it. Additionally, you're going to a lot of the most recent releases of Blue Run have been Castle and Key distillate. We have been distilling for Trinchero, so Amador, and then Brindiamo as well. Some other folks out there that may have NDAs that I can't speak about quite as freely, but we personally try to speak about it as much as we can, just because, like, once again, it's a point of pride, and good whiskey is good whiskey. We just believe in being transparent about it.
Does anybody contract with your same mash bill, or is your mash bill, I mean, not proprietary, because you obviously showed us what it was, so I mean, in theory I could go make it, not that I would be able to do it as well, but
Right.
do you sort of say you can't use our mash bill, or do you sell your own mash bill to others as well?
Everything is going to be unique. We do not replicate our mash bill for anybody else. And we're really taking that that kind of like contract position of a chef in another chef's kitchen, that like Bardstown is doing and a handful of others, versus what you see from MGP, where it's like, hey, we create these same like 5 things, come pick what you want type situation. So we obviously we have certain things that we believe in and processes that we personally want to follow that, like, once again, are not like the most like aren't the best like profit driving decisions to make. So very few other companies would even want to come in and make that decision. They're going to be more about like, hey, how do we maximize like this thing that we're creating? But yeah, it is what we have is exclusively Castle and Key under our label.
And sorry, I have just a bunch of questions moving forward. As far as all of these with the small batch and everything, is there eventually going to be a minimum age that you're going to look for? I'm not saying age stated. I know young doesn't mean bad. You can still be young, but are you got, is this where you think it's going to be? Or as you get more product, you're going to try to have it all be a little bit older? Or what do you think?
No, I think we will continue to push the age statement up. Quite frankly, we're a lot of the whiskey that we have in, probably like the 4-year-old range right now is actually better quality whiskey than like the 6-year-old whiskey. It's just part of the learning curve of getting into this too. So, some of these like younger barrels are actually like making the overall like batches and blends better. That being said, kind of getting over that initial learning curve, I'm sure it will probably even out where we'll start to find more of that kind of like sweet spot in that traditional like 6 to 8 year range. And I would imagine that as we get there, we'll be representative of we'll make sure that it stays true to like what is the youngest whiskey in the barrel and age stating accordingly to that. So, I don't know the exact timeline. It's all going to be kind of like dictated by like the maturation of the whiskey and how we're getting the best possible blends. But I would say the goal in the future is to be able to push the age statement up along with the overall blended age of the whiskey in the bottle.
Hey Siri,
Awesome.
office lights
Love
up.
it. What's that? Oh, sorry. I think that someone was talking to Siri.
Siri's pretty fun. Here's a fun game we play here. If you'd like to join us. So we took a couple of polls throughout the presentation, and I let you, John, guess what you think was the winner of our favorite whiskey of the night.
Oh man. I'm gonna go with, all right. This is coming from Kentucky here, right? So I get to go horse racing rules where I get like a 1A and a 1B. I'm going I'm gonna say weeded as 1A. I'm gonna go Restoration Rye single barrel as 1B.
I've never seen somebody do that, but I'll let it ride because I love a trick question, and especially when somebody gets it right.
Man, look
Tied
at
for
that.
first
Nailed
place.
them both. I feel like I get bonus points for that.
That you do. That was impressive. Usually I love these when they tie and I can trick the person, and bam, you got it. Nice. Yeah, so
Man,
5 votes
man.
for both the single barrel rye and the
That's
weeded
a
bourbon.
first right there.
It is. And then the bourbon took second and Restoration Rye took third. That was great. All right, fine. Or let's do it with the full lineup. What do you think was the
Oof.
was the winner in the full lineup?
Oh man.
Do you here? I'll give you this. Do you think
This
the
is gonna
vodka and
skew
the
it.
gin took any votes away from the whiskey in this whiskey group?
I do.
Oh,
I
wow. Okay.
I think the gin is going to be indexing at 33.
Okay. All right. And no, 0 votes for the gin.
Oh, all right. Well, I look at that. I just evened myself out after that win initially. I got cocky. No,
That's
I love
5
it.
votes
Hey,
again
we
for the
got- we
single
got-
barrel rye and the weeded bourbon.
Love it. Hey, it stayed consistent. That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
but the vodka took a vote away
We
from the
lost a
rye.
vote
That's
on.
impressive. That must have been
Yep.
Jane to switch from the rye to the vodka.
That's fun. I like that you guys do this. That's great. That's great.
Awesome.
Hey, John, don't feel bad at all. I actually did really like that gin. I had a question on it. I don't know if you already touched it on it. But did the gin have sugar added to the recipe after you guys distilled it, or what do you guys do?
No, sir. No, sir. So we are doing what you'd consider like traditional like London dry process, although stylistically it's very like New World Western. So distilling on botanical matter, and then technically in London dry you can add up to 2% sugar. We do not add any sugar. There's no additional sweeteners. It's just the natural sweetness that's coming from that rye whiskey mash bill. But yeah, great question, because there absolutely is a natural sweetness to it. And licorice root. The licorice root contributes sweetness. I don't know if anybody here has had the opportunity to try straight licorice root. It is not like fennel, anise, black licorice at all. It is almost just like almost like artificial sweetener, like sweet, like if you put like Splenda on the tip of your tongue. So a lot of the additional sweetness comes from that licorice root. Great question, though. What else you guys got? Keep it coming. I love the more like technical groups, because typically it's like I'm not having to tell anybody here like what the definition of bourbon or anything else like that. I mean, not that I'm against it by any means. I'll absolutely do that, but it's fun to dive into some stuff that's a little deeper.
Are you able to give us the rye single barrel? Do you know approximately how old that was? Because we've just found you mentioned Pinhook. We tend not to mention other brands until it's brought up. We've done a couple Pinhooks, and with their vertical series of MGP, it's interesting to see. It really proved how much rye I think is better young than bourbon young, and then it sort of changes. And so that rye, I'm sort of wondering, was it on the younger? I mean, it didn't taste young, so I'm not trying to.
No, that's a great observation. And I mean, like I personally like rye to me kind of like bourbon ages, like on that bell curve, right? Like rye has these almost kind of like fluctuations to it where it has, I think like honestly, like 3 and 4 year old rye usually hits like this sweet spot, and then it might get like a little bit weird, and then it starts to get really good again. It's just, you have to kind of like catch it at the right moment. Let's see, Vadim, do you happen to have that bottle on you? Is it have the age statement on the back? I think it's probably a 4-year-old age stated. It could be.
I have it in the garage. I can run and get it. Or I can just give it to Jordan later.
The youngest possible age statement it would be 3. We're not going to do anything that's under 3. The oldest, we have put a couple rye barrels out there that have been 5-year-olds, but most likely it was like it was probably at a 4-year-old age statement.
Jordan, I'll check the bottle later and get it for you. I can post it in the group. I have the bottle in the garage. And
Awesome.
it's too dark outside.
Thank you.
And the single, gosh, we just got through like a really fun pick yesterday actually, on one of these rye single barrels where it was like I our kind of like single barrel coordinator, it was a fun group that was coming in and they'd picked with us before, and so he wanted to throw like some weird curveballs at them, and he threw this one in there that was just absolutely amazing, but it drank like a super like sweet like butterscotch caramel forward high rye bourbon, and I absolutely in my head I thought that this was going to be the one that they picked, and they ended up going with this one, and like my tasting notes were big funky boy, and it was just like this like super dill, savory, umami. I mean, it was 100% out. Like, it was really good, but it was one of the like the more unique, like weirder single barrels I've ever had. So and just in general, like love the whole like single barrel scene and the uniqueness, and that's kind of where I am in the single barrel world too. Like like when I pick up a single barrel, I'm typically wanting to try to find the weirdest, most unique thing out there. So when you guys have a chance to pick with us in the future, we'll see where your all's taste line, and we can definitely get weird if you want. Other questions, guys? What else y'all have for me?
That sounds like don't threaten me with a good time. I'm down. We will be your R&D panel over here. You throw some weird stuff
Love
at
it.
us.
Love it. Do
Yeah,
you guys have a retailer that you primarily work with, by the way?
Yeah, we have a couple down here. I can introduce you to the one we work with. He's kind of small, but we frequently shop at like K&L and the big names. But OC Bottle Shop is who I partner with for everything, and he's fantastic.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
hey, KNL has honestly been David over there has been a great partner from the start. So shout out to David at KNL.
David is going to be on a tasting with us in 2 weeks.
I'm glad I'm not on a tasting panel with him, because he would make me look like I know nothing. So that's appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, I plan to stay on mute the whole time.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, this has been absolutely fantastic. We're looking forward to seeing where you guys go with this. To some funky expressions, some weird single barrels, all day long. We can ask Sean, we have a standing date with him every year to touch base and see how those casks are aging over there. So I'm happy to set something up with you to have you come back and let us know how you guys are doing.
We would love that. We're so I'll keep you in the loop here. We're planning a couple events for June, and actually having our Brett Connors, our lead blender and whiskey wizard, along with Will Arvin, the owner founder, coming out to the LA area. I've got some stuff in the works, hopefully with 7 Grand and KNL and some of the other high profile spots. But so let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's
do
connect.
something
I'm
fun while
happy to
they're
set
out
up
there.
a dinner or a tasting or something. Yeah, we love that stuff.
That'd be amazing. We love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
for sure.
Well, guys, thank you. Like, once again, this has been amazing. I love all of the incredible reception and support from the left coast out there. My kind of final shout out and request from the sales side. If you've got a favorite spot that doesn't have Castle and Key, please ask for it. That helps us out. If there's anything that we can do to help facilitate getting Castle and Key to your favorite preferred retailer, your favorite cocktail spot, let us know. We want to make sure that you have the ability to share Castle and Key spirits and this incredibly cool story of bourbon history with all your friends and family.
Who's your
So,
distributor
thank
out
you.
here?
Republic National, RNDC.
Okay, gotcha. And how are you guys fully rolled out? Because most of the stores that I'm looking at only have 1 or 2 expressions.
I would say so. Gin, vodka, and rye are fully available.
Okay.
We've only been active for honestly right at a month now. And so just kind of the nature of the beast, it's going to take some time, but once again, like the more consumer demand, like the more that helps us out there. And then bourbon really should be landing next week. So I think that'll be the big push. Ask your local retailers if they've got any of that Castle and Key bourbon coming.
What about the single barrel? Is that coming out here or no?
We will have single barrel. We'll probably be looking at that sometime in Q3. And we'll offer that the fairest way possible. We'll kind of look at the retailers, whoever's done the most business so far, give them first choice of preference and do it that way.
Fantastic. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we look forward to it. Awesome, John. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank
Keep
you.
in touch,
Appreciate
and
it,
we look
guys.
forward to
Please,
seeing you in person in June.
looking forward to it. Reach out with any additional questions, guys. Look forward to actually sharing a pour with everybody in person, hopefully sometime soon. So thank you all. Cheers.
Thanks. And thanks to Griffin for setting this up.
Don't give Griffin any credit.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Have a great night. Cheers.
Bye.